it turns out a lot of those independent voters sided with President Obama back in 2008. In fact, they helped get him in the White House. But with an overwhelming majority now saying the country is off track, a lot of folks are wondering which of the GOP candidates has the best chance of winning the independents before Tuesday's primary. Here with a fair and balanced debate, Ford O'Connell is the chairman of the Civic Forum PAC and former director for rural outreach with John McCain's presidential campaign. And David Mercer is a former deputy finance director for the Democratic National Committee. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here, both of you. We appreciate it. Ford, let me start with you. So if you can't win the White House without the independents, you can't win New Hampshire without the independents. So who among the GOP field do you think has the independents, at least in New Hampshire right now?
Well, I think independents in New Hampshire are really looking at three candidates: Ron Paul, Mitt Romney, and John Huntsman. Let me say this. Mitt Romney is 98% guaranteed to win the New Hampshire primary. And if he loses it, it'll be the biggest last-minute primary upset in presidential history. That said, what the independents are going to decide is how much Mitt Romney wins by and who finishes second, third, and fourth.
David, as a Democrat, you look at the GOP field. Do you see one of them as being sort of more appealing to independent voters in New Hampshire or around the country?
I think the thing to look for will be, as Ford had mentioned, is Huntsman and Paul, Romney aside, and who gets the independents, and how much are they taking away the independent vote from Romney. That will tell us the field that is still unsettled, and with the new economic numbers, the jobless or the unemployment rate coming down, people feeling more optimistic, we'll see those independents probably coming into the general election for Obama come 2012 in November. So that's the way I see it, and I think that's the way it's going to unfold.
I want to ask you guys.
David,
Ford.
to your point, one thing I'd like to say about the independents in there, a lot of them are sort of Democratic-leaning independents, and I think a lot of them are likely to cast a vote for Ron Paul thinking that it will benefit President Obama with a longer primary that's dragged out. And we all know Ron Paul is not going to win the GOP nomination.
Well, I wanted to ask you, Ford, about that, because, David, I'll come back to you.
Sure.
But, Ford, if we do see a strong finish by Ron Paul, maybe second-place finish in New Hampshire on Tuesday night, does that not help to elevate him a little bit in the minds of the Republican establishment, maybe make him seem more legitimate as a possible nominee?
Absolutely not. And the reason is because Ron Paul's foreign policy is just out of whack with the Republican Party. Yes, he's right to bring up the idea of questioning whether or not America should be the international policeman, but some of the fact that we can't use sanctions and other things are just too much for a lot of Republican primary voters.
David, let me ask you about John Huntsman, because when he first announced his candidacy with that weird motorcycle ad campaign, I remember when he came out a few months back, he was the darling of the liberal media. I remember all of the New York Times headlines, the Time magazine headlines saying that he was the biggest threat to President Obama's chances of winning a second term. Do you see Huntsman, whose campaign really hasn't gone anywhere, do you see him breaking through?
I think he'll register in New Hampshire. I'm not sure if he can go on into South Carolina and Florida and beyond. He does have a lot of money. Going to the motorcycle ad in your reference to that, he's replaced that with his daughters, who are very active on social media and do have a good presence and very good and articulate. So I think the key thing, though, in looking at Huntsman is the independent vote, as we had started this off with. And regarding Ford's comment regarding how long this primary goes, I think it's in the best interest, and we've heard Republicans say it, that best interest for this primary to test their candidates. And if Romney is going to be the putative nominee, it's good that he go through the process so that he's ready for Obama come the time he might gain the nomination.
Ford, I want to talk to you. David mentioned the economic numbers, the jobs numbers that came out yesterday. By all accounts, these are positive signs showing trends moving in the right direction. We've got the GOP field with really two debates now over the course of the next 12 to 14 hours. They're going to debate twice before Tuesday's primary. How do they respond to the inevitable questions about, hey, things are looking good, the economy is starting to recover, and how do they respond in a way that doesn't make them look like grumpy old men?
That the numbers are off. Yes, we're all rooting for the economy to improve, but 8.5% is not the true unemployment number because so many people have just given up hope looking for work. In reality, we're going to need a whole-scale change to the tax code, the entitlement code, and regulatory reform if we want to promote long-term growth in the United States.
Back to the independents, Dave, real fast as we wrap this up. President Obama, we mentioned he wouldn't have won the White House without them. He's not going to win a second term without them. How does he get them back into his camp?
Two ways. One, we know that one thing independents look to, and that's a working government. And this president, going to the numbers, is starting to see the trend lines go in the favor of the American working family and American prosperity. And we have to keep our focus on that. Secondly, all we see from the Republicans, whether it be a divided caucus in the House and the Senate, whether it be division among ideologies, whether it be a division as we're seeing and saw in Iowa with 25% here for Romney, 25% Torm, et cetera. That continued division does nothing in bringing the American prosperity that we need to the forefront, which Obama is doing with the American people, with or without the Republicans. And it's their option to come in and help, but we're going to go forward.
Ford, 20 seconds, giving the last word.
I'm going to tell you, New Hampshire is going to be very interesting because I think the eventual final finish is going to be Romney 1, Paul 2, Santorum 3, and Huntsman 4. The question is whether or not Huntsman is able to break through and actually tout the fact he has the best economic plan. If not, he should probably drop out of New Hampshire. But I will say if he'd had his daughters front and center earlier, his numbers might look differently because they're doing a great job out there campaigning for him.
As a father of 3 daughters myself, I could only pray that my daughters would come out and speak so highly of me the way that John Huntsman's daughters do of him. Thanks very much, guys. Ford O'Connell, David Mercer, good to see you both.
Thank you.
Rick.